She gave her life for the predator cubs. Now her name lives on every blade. The stars above the Andromeda fringe stretched like endless rivers of light. Among them, human ships glided silently, carrying supplies, explorers, and soldiers who dared to venture into uncharted space. Captain Alara Vin stood on the bridge of her ship, the Aurora Hawk, staring at the holographic map projected before her. Red dots marked zones of conflict, sectors torn apart by interstellar mercenaries and rogue alien factions. But one blip caught her attention more than any other. A tiny cluster in a war-torn world, the coordinates of a Xylaris nursery. The Xylaris were a species humans had learned to fear and respect. Predator-like in appearance, with sharp eyes, clawed limbs, and a natural strength that far surpassed humans, they were one of the galaxy's most formidable races. Yet beneath their ferocious exterior, they were capable of loyalty, intelligence, and care for their young. The nursery, the report said, held vulnerable Xylaris cubs, caught in the crossfire of a territorial war. Ilara's stomach tightened. She had faced impossible missions before, but this one felt different. These were not soldiers or invaders, they were children, and humans had a choice. She clenched her fists. "We're going in," she said quietly to herself. Her lieutenant, Jalen Myro, approached. "Captain, the council doesn't want you entering the zone. It's too dangerous." "We don't even know if the cubs survived the bombardment." Ilara turned to face him. "That's exactly why we have to go. If we wait for permission, it'll be too late. I can't let them die." Her voice was firm yet calm. "I've made my decision." Jalen nodded slowly, knowing better than to argue. Ilara was not only brave but brilliant at calculating risks. Still, even he couldn't hide the worry in his eyes. "Very well, but we'll need a plan." Ilara smiled faintly. "Of course, and it will be a good one." The Aurora Hawk slipped through space like a silver shadow. Sensors scanned the planet below, an alien world of jagged mountains, deep craters, and smoldering ruins. Smoke rose from broken cities, evidence of recent battles. Ilara's team of soldiers and engineers gathered around the briefing table. Though humans had faced many alien species, there was something unique about rescuing creatures so different from them, yet so innocent. "The cubs are located here," Ilara pointed at the hologram. "The ruins of what was once the Xylaris nursery. It's heavily patrolled, but we have one advantage. They won't expect humans to care this much about them." A young engineer, Lena Corvus, raised her hand nervously. "Captain, what if the patrols are too many?" "We could lose the entire team." Ilara looked at her steadily. "Then we adapt, we find a way. Humanity has always survived against impossible odds, Lena. That's what we do." Hours later, their shuttle dropped into the atmosphere. Fire and ash swirled around them as the engines roared. Ilara's heart beat fast, but her mind was focused. She had planned every move, anticipated every danger, and yet nothing could fully prepare her for the scene that awaited. The nursery was a hollow shell of what it had been. Smoke curled from shattered walls. Alien patrols moved methodically, unaware of the intruders. Ilara signaled her team. They split into two groups, one to create a distraction and the other, led by her, to enter the ruins and find the cubs. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of scorched metal. Tiny sounds reached her ears, cries almost drowned beneath the roar of distant battles. She moved swiftly, scanning the shadows. Then she saw them. 3 Xylaris cubs huddled together, eyes wide and trembling. Their claws scratched the ground nervously and their young bodies shook with fear. Ilara's chest tightened. She knelt down slowly, keeping her hands visible. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here to help." The cubs eyed her cautiously. One, the smallest, stepped forward. It sniffed the air, then let out a soft whine. Ilara extended her hand. The cub pressed its head against her palm. "There we go," she said softly. "You're safe now." "I promise." But safety was fleeting. Outside, alarms blared. Patrols had detected the distraction. Footsteps and alien growls echoed through the ruins. Jalen's voice came through her calm. "Captain, they're closing in. We need to move." Alara lifted the cub carefully, placing it in a protective carrier. "Go, Lena, take the cubs and lead them to the shuttle. I'll cover you." "No, Captain," Jalen began, but she shook her head. "I said go, now." The team hesitated, but loyalty won over fear. They sprinted toward the extraction point, carrying the cubs. Alara turned to face the advancing patrols. Her pulse raced, but her mind was calm. She had a plan, one last move to give the cubs a chance. She activated a series of tactical devices she had carried, small explosive charges, holographic decoys, and a disruption field that would confuse the patrols temporarily. Aliens lunged toward her, claws flashing, but the field distorted their vision. The decoys created multiple false images of her, and in the chaos she slipped past the enemies. Then she saw the patrol leader, a massive Xylaris warrior, towering even among its kind. Its eyes glowed, and it let out a roar that shook the walls. Alara realized the truth. She could not get past it. She had only one option. She planted the final charge in the ruins, a device designed to collapse the structure just enough to block the patrol's advance. Then she signaled the team, "Go, now." The cubs' cries reached her ears as she watched them disappear into the shuttle. Alara felt a pang of fear she would not be joining them, but her mind was resolute. Humanity's greatest strength was the courage to do what others could not, and sometimes that meant standing alone. The patrols approached. Alara met them head-on, using every skill, every ounce of strength, and every piece of human ingenuity. She moved with precision, anticipating attacks, outmaneuvering the predators despite their overwhelming size and power. Her weapons and devices gave her a fighting chance, but the odds were impossible. Finally, the charge detonated. Dust and rubble exploded around her, creating a wall between her and the enemies. She shielded herself, knowing it would not hold for long, but every second counted. Somewhere beyond that wall, the cubs were safe. Alara let out a deep breath, looking at the stars through the broken roof. Humanity had a name, a legacy, and a story of courage. She whispered almost to herself, "Go live and remember." Outside, the shuttle lifted into the sky, carrying the cubs to safety. Lena and Jalen watched from the cockpit, tears in their eyes. She did it," Lena said softly. "She saved them." Jalen nodded, his jaw tight, "and she made sure they'd survive." "Captain Vin, she gave everything for them." The shuttle disappeared into the stars, leaving the ruins and the dust of battle behind. Alara remained inside, facing the patrols alone, but her heart was full. She had done what humans always did best: sacrifice for others, think beyond themselves, and show courage when none seemed possible. The first story of her heroism began to spread quietly, whispered in human colonies, in Xylaris settlements, and among the few who had witnessed her bravery. It was the beginning of a legend, one that would live long after the dust settled. And though her fate was uncertain, one truth was clear: her name would not be forgotten. Somewhere in the distant corners of the galaxy, the cubs would grow, learn, and carry forward the courage of the human who gave everything to protect them. The stars shimmered quietly above the peaceful sectors, where the Aurora Hawk's shuttle had delivered the Xylaris cubs. The tiny creatures, once trembling in fear, had grown stronger, their bright eyes now filled with curiosity and courage. Humans had taken them under protection, ensuring their survival and education in both human and Xylaris ways. They were a symbol of what could happen when two very different species worked together. Hope. Lena Corvus, the young engineer who had helped Alara during the mission, now walked among the cubs, teaching them about basic technology and communication devices. Their small claws and limbs moved carefully as they tried to understand tools and gadgets, their minds bright with curiosity. One of the cubs, the smallest of the three, tilted its head at a floating holographic interface. It pawed gently at the light. "Like this," Lena encouraged, her voice gentle. "You can do it." In the nearby human settlement, discussions were underway about the impact of Alara's sacrifice. News of her bravery had spread, and humans and Zalaris alike had begun to see her as more than a captain. She had become a legend. The Council of Allied Species had called a meeting, debating how best to honor her memory and ensure her actions would inspire generations to come. "Her sacrifice was extraordinary," said Admiral Traven, a tall human with gray hair and sharp eyes. "She didn't just save the cubs, she gave humanity a story of courage and selflessness. That kind of heroism needs a permanent reminder." A Xylaris elder, his horns curving gracefully backward, nodded solemnly. "Yes, in our culture, warriors are remembered through symbols. She acted as a true ally, protecting our young when none dared to enter the danger. We must ensure her name is honored in ways that endure." Ideas were suggested, monuments, stories, ceremonies, but one human engineer proposed something different, a weapon, not for destruction alone, but as a symbol of courage. "We can create blades," she explained. "Forged from rare alloys incorporating both human precision and Xylaris craftsmanship. Each blade will carry her story and spirit." The council agreed. Thus, the Vin blades were born. Each blade was carefully forged, a delicate combination of strength, flexibility, and artistry. The Xylaris smiths engraved symbols representing protection and bravery, while human engineers added layers of technology to enhance precision and resilience. The blades would not just fight enemies, they would remind every wielder of the courage humans had shown. Meanwhile, the cubs continued to grow under human guidance. They learned tactics, strategy, and teamwork. They were playful but intelligent, quick learners who remembered every lesson. Lena often watched them with admiration. "Alara would be proud," she whispered, "but peace never lasts long in the galaxy." Reports of a mercenary fleet moving through nearby sectors reached the settlement. These mercenaries were ruthless, exploiting the fragile alliances among species and threatening innocent colonies. They were strong, organized, and technologically advanced, unlike anything humans or Xylaris had faced together before. Admiral Traven called a meeting. Humans, Xylaris leaders, and the cubs, now slightly older and capable of assisting in strategy, gathered around the holographic war map. Red dots marked the path of the mercenary fleet. "We cannot face them head-on," the Admiral explained. "They are too many, too powerful. But we can use strategy, teamwork, and the terrain to our advantage." One of the cubs, now almost the size of a young adult Xylaris, tilted its head. It had learned to understand human speech, to think in tactical patterns. "We can set traps," it suggested, claws tapping lightly on the hologram. "Use the mountains, force them into narrow paths, then humans can attack from above." The room was silent for a moment. The idea was clever and the humans realized it had merit. Lena smiled. Alara would have thought the same way. She always found ways to use intelligence over strength. Preparations began immediately. Humans and Xylaris worked side by side, reinforcing terrain, creating ambush points, and preparing the Vin blades for distribution to elite defenders. Every blade was personalized, each one engraved with Alara's name and symbols representing protection, courage, and selflessness. As the first line of defense trained, the cubs practiced alongside them. They learned not just combat but observation, strategy, and loyalty. Their young minds absorbed everything quickly, showing how humans could inspire and nurture even the fiercest species. Days passed, and the mercenary fleet approached. Ships appeared on sensors like black storms, moving with precision and purpose. The settlement was ready, its defenders equipped with both human ingenuity and Xylaris strength. The air was tense, filled with anticipation and determination. Alara's story had spread beyond this small settlement. Humans across nearby sectors shared the tale of her sacrifice. Her name inspired courage among soldiers, engineers, and even civilians. She had given humanity a model of bravery, showing that even against impossible odds, humans could make a difference. As night fell over the rugged terrain, the defenders took their positions. The cubs, now young warriors, stood proudly alongside humans. Each held a small ceremonial blade, a practice version of the Vin blade, while the experienced soldiers held the real ones. Lena walked along the line, checking readiness. "Remember," she said softly, "these blades are more than weapons. They are a promise that courage, loyalty, and sacrifice will always matter." The first wave of mercenaries entered the narrow valley. They were confident, expecting little resistance. But the defenders waited silently, hidden in the shadows, observing every movement. Then, with a signal from the cubs, the ambush began. Explosions rocked the valley as traps activated, rocks tumbled, and carefully designed obstacles funneled the enemy into kill zones. Humans and Xylaris struck in perfect coordination. Blades flashed in the moonlight, reflecting the skill and unity of their wielders. The Vin blades, sharp and resilient, cut through mechanical barriers and armor with ease. But more than that, they inspired those who held them. Each swing reminded the fighters of Alara's courage, giving them strength beyond their physical limits. The battle raged for hours. Mercenaries were relentless, but the defenders' strategy and teamwork proved superior. The cubs, nimble and quick, used their predator instincts to outmaneuver enemies, guiding humans to weak points and leading counterattacks. Their intelligence and loyalty reminded everyone that bravery was not limited to any species. It was a choice, a quality nurtured by care, training, and trust. By dawn, the valley was quiet. The mercenary fleet had retreated, their forces broken and scattered. Humans and Xylaris stood together, victorious, exhausted, and grateful. The cubs, though young, had played a crucial role, earning admiration and respect from both species. Admiral Traven surveyed the battlefield. "This was more than a victory," he said. "This was proof that humans and Xylaris can work together, that intelligence, courage, and selflessness matter. And it all started with one person, Captain Alara Vin." The defenders gathered at the center of the valley, raising the Vin blades in salute. Each blade glinted in the early sunlight, a symbol of the human who had given everything to protect life. Lena's eyes filled with tears. "She lives on," she whispered, "in these blades, in the cubs, and in all of us who fight for what's right." The Xylaris elder stepped forward. "Her spirit will guide future generations," he said in his deep, resonant voice. "Every warrior who holds a Vin blade will remember her courage. Every cub she saved will honor her with their strength and loyalty." Even as the celebration began, the leaders knew the galaxy remained dangerous. Other threats would come, new enemies would challenge them, and alliances would be tested. But one truth remained unshakable. Humanity had proven itself not just capable of survival, but of inspiring bravery, loyalty, and selflessness. And somewhere among the stars, Alara's name whispered through the minds of humans and Xylaris alike. Every swing of a blade, every daring maneuver, every act of courage carried a part of her story. The legacy she had begun with her sacrifice was no longer hers alone. It belonged to everyone who fought to protect others. The cubs trained through the day and night, their movements sharp, their instincts keen. They learned from humans, observed their strategies, and applied their natural abilities to enhance the plans of their allies. Each day they grew closer to becoming warriors capable of defending the galaxy, just as Alara had dreamed. As the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, Lena stood quietly, watching the young Xylaris. "They will remember her," she said softly. "And they will make us proud." A wind blew through the valley, carrying dust, ash, and the faint echo of battles past, but it also carried hope, courage, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. Captain Alara Vin had shown that one person's courage could change everything. And as her name lived on in every blade, every cub, and every human who dared to fight, the galaxy began to understand the power of selflessness, intelligence, and bravery. The legend of the Vin Blades and the Predator Cubs had only just begun. The galaxy was never quiet for long. Even after the mercenary fleet was driven from the valley, new threats loomed on the horizon. Reports of hostile raiders and rogue factions reached human and Zalaris settlements almost daily. Yet the story of Captain Alara Vin, the human who had sacrificed herself to save the Predator Cubs, continued to inspire both species. Her courage had become a symbol of hope, and the Vin blades she had inspired were now carried by every warrior who defended life across the sectors. The Predator Cubs, now young warriors in their own right, stood on the cliffs overlooking their training grounds. They had grown stronger, sharper, and wiser. Each movement was precise, each decision quick and careful. Humans had taught them strategy, tactics, and teamwork, while their own instincts gave them an unmatched edge. They remembered Alara's sacrifice every day, not as a tale of sorrow but as a guiding light. Lena Corvus, now a senior strategist and engineer, watched the Cubs train. "They've come so far," she said softly. "Alara would be proud, but the real test is coming. We can't just hope they'll survive. We need them to lead, to fight, and to protect others just like she did." Admiral Traven entered the training field, his eyes scanning the horizon. Sensors indicate a large fleet approaching. Faster than the last mercenary group, more organized, more dangerous. They've come for the valley and the settlements. His voice carried both urgency and calm authority. This will be the ultimate test of what humans and Zalaris can do together. The defenders moved quickly. Humans and Zalaris alike prepared, equipping themselves with the finest weapons, including the Vin blades. Each blade was polished, sharpened, and tested. Soldiers held them not just as tools, but as symbols, reminders of bravery, sacrifice, and the bond between species. The Cubs were given ceremonial blades, slightly smaller but equally potent. They had trained their minds and bodies for this day. They knew the stakes and were determined to honor Alara's memory. "We will not fail," one of them said in a low, confident growl. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, reflecting the determination of all those who had learned from humanity's courage. When the enemy fleet appeared on sensors, it stretched across the horizon like a black storm. Ships moved with precision, their engines glowing ominously against the void of space. The defenders gathered in the valley, hearts steady, minds focused. The Cubs stood at the forefront, their instincts tuned to detect even the slightest movement. The battle began with the fleet entering the valley. Humans and Zalaris waited patiently, letting them advance into the traps and ambush points carefully prepared over weeks. Explosions shook the mountains as strategic devices, set by humans, collapsed pathways, slowed enemy vehicles, and diverted attacks. The defenders struck from the sides, taking advantage of every weakness. The Vin blades flashed in the sunlight. Humans and Zalaris fought together seamlessly, each movement coordinated, each strike precise. The Cubs darted through the battlefield, fast and intelligent, herding enemies into positions where human fighters could engage safely. Their claws were sharp, their movements calculated but always disciplined. They attacked only when necessary, showing that bravery included wisdom, not recklessness. Despite the enemy's superior numbers, the defenders' strategy proved effective. Explosions, collapses, and precision strikes caused chaos among the attackers. The fleet had expected human hesitation, but they found cleverness, adaptability, and determination instead. Above the battlefield, the human pilots maneuvered through asteroid fields, providing support for ground forces. Zalaris warriors leaped across broken terrain with incredible agility, striking swiftly and retreating before enemies could counter. Every soldier, human or Zelaris, carried the spirit of Alara Vin with them. Hours passed. The battle raged under the sun and stars, the valley shaking from the force of explosions and clashes, yet the defenders never wavered. The Cubs led counterattacks, humans flanked enemies, and the Vin blades struck with unmatched precision. Slowly, the enemy fleet began to falter, their formation broken, their morale shaken by the unity and skill of their opponents. One particularly large enemy ship descended toward the center of the valley, threatening to crush the defenders. Lena's eyes widened as she calculated the odds. "We can't let it reach the civilians," she shouted. "We'll need the Cubs' help to guide the strike." The Cubs nodded and sprang into action. Using their speed and instincts, they coordinated movements with humans on the ground, signaling targets and weak points. A team of human engineers had set up an energy trap, an intricate mechanism combining Zelaris power channels and human technology. The Cubs led the ship directly into it, and with a brilliant flash of light, the enemy vessel was disabled. The remaining fleet saw this and faltered, confusion spreading through their ranks. Admiral Traven raised his voice. "Now, strike together." Humans and Zelaris surged forward. The Vin blades, wielded with skill and precision, cut through the enemy's remaining forces. The battlefield was chaotic, but every strike carried a sense of purpose. Courage, strategy, and unity triumphed over sheer numbers. As the dust settled and silence returned to the valley, the defenders stood victorious. The enemy fleet was defeated, scattered, and in retreat. Humans and Zelaris alike celebrated, but there was a quiet moment of reflection. Each soldier, each Cub, remembered Captain Alara Vin. Her sacrifice had made this possible. Without her courage, without her decision to save the Cubs, this victory might never have happened. The Cubs approached the center of the battlefield, carrying the Vin blades in a ceremonial gesture. Lena and the Admiral watched as the young warriors lifted the blades high, their small forms a symbol of hope, unity, and bravery. "She lives in them," Lena whispered. "And in all of us." The Zelaris elder stepped forward, his deep voice carrying across the valley. "Let this day be remembered, not just as a victory, but as proof of the strength of cooperation, courage, and selflessness. Captain Alara Vin gave everything to protect life. Today, her legacy is complete." Human and Zelaris leaders signed new alliances in the weeks that followed, ensuring the protection of colonies and fostering joint training programs. The Vin blades were distributed to elite warriors across multiple sectors. Each blade carried the name of a human who had taught courage, loyalty, and strategic thinking, a reminder that bravery and sacrifice could change the fate of entire species. The predator Cubs continued their training, now leaders in their own right. They patrolled the settlements alongside humans, guided missions, and taught new generations about strategy, loyalty, and courage. They told stories of the human who had given her life for them, ensuring that every young warrior, human or Zelaris, understood the meaning of bravery. Years passed, and the legend of Alara Vin became a cornerstone of interstellar history. Statues were erected in settlements, but more importantly, her spirit lived in every blade, every strategy, and every act of courage inspired by her sacrifice. Soldiers wielded the Vin blades not for glory, but for protection, unity, and honor. Even among distant human colonies, far from the valley where she had given her life, the story of the captain spread. Children learned of her courage, young soldiers trained with her ideals in mind, and Zelaris elders spoke her name as a symbol of true alliance. Her sacrifice had created ripples across the galaxy, proving that humanity's strength was not only in technology or numbers, but in courage, intelligence, and selflessness. The final scene of Part 3 shows the valley at sunset. The young Zelaris warriors, the Cubs grown into capable leaders, stood on the cliffs. Humans below raised their Vin blades, a gleaming field of steel and determination. A soft wind carried the memory of Alara Vin across the valley, whispering through the grass and rocks, telling all who would listen that courage, sacrifice, and humanity could change the course of destiny. Lena placed her hand on a newly forged Vin blade, polished and engraved with the captain's name. "We will never forget," she said softly, "and we will continue what she started. Humanity and the Zalaris together can face anything." As darkness fell and stars appeared, the valley was peaceful, but the defenders knew that the galaxy would always have threats. Yet they also knew something stronger now. Courage could be taught, hope could be nurtured, and selflessness could create heroes whose names would live forever. Captain Alara Vin's name had become immortal, not just in stories, but in every blade, every warrior, and every act of bravery that followed. She had given her life for the Predator cubs, but in return, she had given the galaxy a legacy that would shine brighter than any star. The story ended not with sorrow, but with triumph, honor, and inspiration. A true HFY testament to what humans could achieve when courage, intelligence, and selflessness led the way.